I got a whole bunch of subscribers of a video I think I made about 10 or 11 days ago. And I just think it's funny that I've got all of these new subscribers, right, that are, supposedly interested in my content. Then I just spent nearly 2 weeks without making anything. So you're just thinking to yourself, what did I subscribe for? Okay, well, hopefully you subscribe for something like today. This conversation is going to be slightly political, but honestly, I'm going to mainly focus on the gaming aspect because at the end of the day, we're here for gamers. However, I always have an issue with the saying of, "Oh, get this politics out of our games," because guess what? All art is political. You can't get politics out of gaming just like you can't get politics out of any other art or any other medium. Hell, you can't get politics out of your life no matter how much you want to. And the truth is that the notion that you can stay away from politics or not be affected by politics or political speech or political talk or anything that might be considered political is simply childish, right? And it's the mind of at best a teenager, but in reality, everything that we do is affected by politics, either of the time or politics of yesteryear. Sometimes it might even be affected by future politics that are coming up. So today we are going to do the mature thing, and we're going to talk about the video game medium and certain elements that are happening inside our medium that happen to be political, not because I'm trying to change your political outlook or whatever, but simply because certain conversations must be had. So today I present to you that wokeism is a joke. And first we need to talk about what I mean by wokeism. So here is a quick definition that I found. Wokeism is weaponized personal grievances masquerading as a genuine social concern. It's defined by its fraudulent nature as being distinct from legitimate social grievances. Wokeism only knows outrage. It knows not empathy for victims. And this conversation here is triggered by a lot of the grifting that we've seen, in video games recently. Nowadays, you cannot go through Twitter, scroll, past 5 posts without someone somewhere declaring that something is woke. And we could talk about the merits of that word and how it has been bastardized to mean nothing, because if everything is work, then nothing is. And if everything is work, then it itself has no meaning. But like I said, today we are going to focus on the different aspect of the conversation, because I don't want to talk about whether something is woke or not. I don't even want to talk about the legitimacy of whether we should call something woke or not. I want to talk about wokeism. And as you can see that from the definition, it is this fraudulent behavior that pretends that they are somehow outraged or the personal grievances with a particular piece of work is of the utmost social importance. And there are many reasons why this thing is perpetrated and perpetuated in our community. And we have to be aware of where it comes from. Because when I saw the reaction to the Naughty Dog trailer, Intergalactic, and everybody was talking about how it was woke and all of these things, obviously I had my reaction to it, but then I asked myself, why is this a thing? And if you take a look at YouTube, like you just type in Intergalactic, just go on a private browser, so it doesn't even know your history or which way you lean in the agenda, it will most certainly put in front of you a lot of these grifters, a lot of these people who are claiming that this piece of art, this piece of work is, part of quote unquote the agenda. And we have to ask ourselves why. That's what I was asking myself for the last week and a half or so. Literally, I was thinking to myself, like, all of this, like, why is this so prevalent? Why is it that you cannot escape this no matter how little you want to participate? Even if you agree that it is woke or it is leftist or it is left-leaning or that it is, aligned with leftist ideologies, whatever those are. Don't you just get tired of this? This constant refrain? Do you not realize that this is incredibly unimportant to the rest of your life? And that's when I realized it. I realized it today. I realized that wokeism is a joke and we are the punchline. But it's also a purposeful distraction away from the things that actually matter. Because you see, If these people, at the top, the top 1%, the wealthy, the elites, the CEOs, the mega rich corporations, if they can keep the rest of us fighting each other, right? Horizontal fighting between you and I, rather than vertical fighting between our class, the working class, and their class, the wealthy class, then they don't have to put up or defend or justify or fix a lot of real problems that we have instead. And I realized that it is a movement. The perfect thing about wokeism is that it targets every aspect of social cultures or social norms. It's not just video games. It is movies. It is art. It is music. It is film. It is theater. It's pretty much everything. It's all encompassing. You can call anything woke. You can call a public bench woke. And that is perfect. It's the perfect distraction because it doesn't just distract one segment of the population, it distracts all segments of the population. Because in everything that you see, wokeism or wokeism, woke mentality, the woke police has every means of outrage. It doesn't matter what it is. In fact, the outrage is so ridiculous sometimes that something that they declared as woke is now, after it has gotten success, proven not to be so woke anymore. And in fact, it is anti-woke. And I think the perfect example that I can think about this, God, what did it happen to be? I think it probably happened to be Stellar Blade. Because do you remember the censoring controversy? Where these people were just declaring that a single piece of fabric had now wokeified the entire game. And yet when it came out to be successful, suddenly it's not. Or even things like Arcane, the show. And I'm trying to think about video game examples specifically because these are the things that show that these people are grifters. At the end of the day, the work didn't change, but because their repudiation, because their attack on this work was no longer valid and rather it was seen to be successful, desirable, and acceptable within the communities, they now changed the narrative to somehow these works that were woke before they came out are now anti-woke. They go against the leftist ideologies, even though the content of the work itself did not change. So let's talk a little bit about what I mean. Now, I said that ultimately, we have a moment where we are looking to be distracted. This is what the ultimate goal is. Because if you are there caring about whether something is woke or not, whether a transgender person goes into a male or a female bathroom to piss or not, then you're not thinking about real issues. And just think about that. Do you really care? Do you actually really care? You might have opinions about it, but do you really care to the extent that social media will have you care about whether a person goes to piss in this bathroom or in that bathroom? Do you really care who a person sleeps next to, whether they're in a homosexual or a heterosexual relationship? Does that really have any bearing on your life? No, I would say no, because you are a somewhat reasonable person. And the first social issue that we are being distracted by or distracted from is a real issue of just economics. Now, if you want to understand what it is that wokeism does for the wealthy class, is that it distracts from real issues. And the first real issue has to be housing affordability. Okay, so we're just going to take a look. Now, using Australia here as a sample, but I can guarantee you, if you go ahead and you do your homework, and besides, listen, I'm not going to be providing you with all of the work, okay? If you want to go and understand economics and how they have changed over time and how that has real impact on your life to your day-to-day, you have to go and do the work. However, I can present you examples that might be a starting point for you, but in no way is this going to be a comprehensive discussion about economics and how far the rabbit hole goes, okay? But let's take a look at this. Buying a house in the 80s versus today, okay? Now, the average Australian, okay, in 1984 could buy a home that cost 3.3 times their annual income. In 2023, it is 10 times what the average person earns in a year. Housing affordability or housing inaffordability is one of the biggest components of like the fragility that we see. Because what I realize is that people are not actually that angry about whether one character in a video game is black or not, or whether they're a woman or not, or whether they shave their head or not. What they're actually angry about are real issues that they are facing every day, economic and societal issues, but they feel powerless to do anything about. Okay, now this of course is a fallacy, because I can guarantee you, almost no matter where you live, almost, right? You as a voter have more power to change the economic reality that you are in through your vote, through your right to exercise, your run for parliament or your run for a local office, through your ability to organize and to unionize and do everything like that. You have more power to change those things than you have the power to change who the main character in a Naughty Dog game is. Because at the end of the day, whilst Sony and Microsoft and Nintendo, perhaps, a lot of these corporations like Ubisoft, okay, are publicly traded companies, you are not the public that they are beholden to. Okay, you're not a shareholder, most likely. And even if you were a shareholder, you're not a significant enough shareholder for your voice to have an impact there. Or at least most gamers are not. You might be the exception, in which case, congratulations to you. However, when it comes to your voting power and your voting potential and your political voice and your ability to unionize, to galvanize support for a particular cause, and to just organize, movements with people, you have a lot more power. But what do we do instead? We direct your anger. At the end of the day, you're feeling vulnerable. You're feeling in a position where you might be renting a house like I am and have no real chance of actually buying into the market. I have friends that have been looking for homes for years, okay? And they just cannot afford to live where they want to live. And this is directly related to this. In 1984, the average home cost was $64,000, okay? All in Australia, but trust me, it scales pretty much one-to-one across the world, for most of the Western world anyway. And then in China, it gets a little bit worse. In some places in East Asia, it gets even worse than that. Okay. The average annual income was $19,188, okay? The average mortgage was $42,000. Compared to 2023, the average homes now cost $920,000. By the way, this year is the median income, and then the median it's based on the median calculation, not the mean calculation. So it isn't as affected by the outliers. So it is actually good data. The average annual income is $90,000, okay? And an average mortgage is $576,000, okay? So what that means is that Australian home buyers now borrow 10 times their annual income. That's crazy, okay? To put this in other words, that means that a person who bought, let's say that you had in 1984, and you had a couple or you had a person, you're single by themselves. Most of the time they were single income households anyway, and they could buy themselves a home, okay? That will cost, let's say, about average. Let's say it was about $64,000. Remember that this is the median, this is the average. There were homes that cost less than that. Now, if that person was then to have children that at the age of 30, okay, or, in the age of 30, wanted to buy their own home in the same neighborhood, they will not be able to afford it. Because by the time you're in 2014, you are paying at least 5 times as much as your parents paid, which just makes it completely unsustainable and completely unaffordable compared to the median income. Because while, yes, you can see that the average income increased by about roughly 4.5 times, you can see there that the average cost of the house increased by 10 times. Actually, that's much more than 10 times, because 64,000 to 922,000, 920,000, that is a lot more. But you can see the first problem. Now, anecdotally, I just wanted to come up with this example because I have a friend over here who can say that. So their parent bought a house in 1993, okay? It was about $30,000, including the land and including the build of the house, $30,000. A very similar property sold recently within the last 2 years, and the price sold was $700,000. So that means that their home at the moment, the parents' house that they bought in 1993, is worth more than 23 times what it is when they first purchased it. This is a real issue, and this is what generates a lot of anger. We feel a lot of fragility because we have this income insecurity, we have this economic insecurity, we have this housing insecurity, we have all of this economic anxiety, and we don't know what to do with it. And so we are directed to Twitter to go and complain about some woke game. Like, you have to understand the manipulation that is going on. You have to understand just how far things are going for things to just be as crazy as they are. Now, I told you a little bit around the world how this scales up. So over here in Shanghai, local property, this was in 2017, local property was about 50 times the median salary. 50 times the median salary. That means you will need you will need to work 50 years in order to afford your house today, because it'll be more expensive in 50 years. You can't buy it in 50 years time, because it'll be even worth more than that. No, you would have to buy it today, but then have worked 50 years, I guess, in the past, I suppose. It's just like, if you weren't born 50 years ago, what were you doing? You were just being lazy. You deserve this. Now in London, it's only 14 times, okay? So it's a little bit more than Australia. It's a lot less than Shanghai. But like I said, this tracks pretty much across the world. In some parts of the United States, to this day, it's only about 5 times the median income. You know, in lots of states, you will have really great housing affordability. But in places like New York, it's more like 32 times. Again, you can go and you take this little seed, this little nugget about how you can compare the median income versus the median cost for a home, and you go and you have fun with that. You look at the economic reality of that, and you understand that this generation has had to suffer from the consequences that governments made about 20 or 30 years ago, okay? Because we are now living in the aftermath of those choices, and it is not it is not whining to say that this isn't okay and this isn't sustainable. So just to explain to you how bad this is, because sometimes we look back and then we just go like, oh well, I guess that's the way things go. Well, over here you can see here, if property prices were to rise at the same rate as the past 25 years, Australia's median house value would reach $2.9 million. That's how much it will cost to buy an average ass home in Australia if you let this current system just keep going for another 25 years. That's how ridiculous it is. So imagine you now having to buy a house at $900,000, and then your children, this isn't, 2 generations away. 25 years is 1 generation. Your child will have to pay nearly $3 million to get the house next to you. That's crazy. And remember that this isn't okay. Like, for the longest time, the idea, how many sitcoms did you see from like the 1990s or the 1980s or the 2000s, where you would have generations of families just living in like one cul-de-sac? Like, I forget which show it was that was really popular for it. I didn't really care for it. But literally, they had like 3 houses next to each other. It was like the grandfather generation, then it was like the son's generation, so I guess that's the father, and then it was like the grandchild generation. All of them on one street, because each generation could afford to live next to their parents. Now it's crazy. Now if you buy a house at 900,000, your son will have to pay 3 million to buy the house next door by the time they're 25. It's insane. Housing inequality is insane. This housing inaffordability, this housing crisis we are all going through, it's insane. We have every reason to be angry about it. It doesn't mean that you're just like a whinging little Gen Z or whatever it is, or whatever derogatory term. No, you can't just keep working your way out of these unfair conditions. You can't just keep just piling on more work, 2, 3, 4, 5 jobs in a row. When are you going to eat? When are you going to sleep? When are you going to socialize? What are the ramifications of this? And we will be talking about the ramifications of this kind of pressure very soon. Okay, so let me just put up one more thing here for you, because it's very important that we illustrate this and to show that everything that we are saying is things that are actually happening to people on a day-to-day basis. Okay, so before we go to ramifications, let's talk a little bit about the opposite, because I said to you that what this is in a large part, there's uber wealthy class, okay, distracting the rest of us so that we fight amongst ourselves while they keep making more and more profit. So let me just illustrate that point. CEO pay, okay, has skyrocketed 1,460% since 1978. Okay, now this here is a very beautiful article. Okay, you can even see here is the title. There it is, the publishing house, or the website that you can go and see, and you can do the research yourself. I would love to guarantee that I'm going to post all of these articles down there, but honestly, I might forget. So if you're interested, go ahead, do the research yourself, read the entire thing yourself, because it's quite fascinating. But over here, it says in 2021, the ratio of CEO pay to typical work compensation was 399 to 1. So that means that a CEO earns nearly 400 times, okay, what a typical worker will earn. 400 times, okay? Whereas in the past, okay, it was only 20 to 1 in 1965 and 59 to 1 in 1989. Now listen, I do not think that CEOs should be paid the same as a common worker. And you know what? Can we just go back to 1989? Isn't being paid 50 to 60 times what the average worker does or what they earn? Is that enough for a CEO? Like, wasn't that good enough? Like, why are you being paid 400 to 1? And this is just the median. This is like the average CEO, right? Looking at the top 350 companies, I think is what they looked at over here. Okay. But let's talk a little bit about why it matters, okay? Exorbitant CEO pay is a contributor to rising inequality that we could restrain without doing damage to the wider economy. CEOs are getting higher pay over time because of their power to set pay, and because so much of their pay, more than 80%, is stock related. So let's talk a little bit about that. A quick little fact is that a lot of CEOs in positions like Elon Musk or Satya Nadella or everything like that, they get to negotiate their pay. But however, they often get to negotiate their pay with members of the board of directors, right? So with the board of directors themselves, that's who they negotiate their pay with. The problem there is that there's lots of social relationships that are not taken into account when people think like the board is somehow going to be fair to these people, because a lot of the people who are on the board of directors are personal friends with the actual CEO. So what you end up is with these power dynamics, or rather these friendship dynamics, where of course you want your friend to make the most amount of money that they can, because this is your personal friend. You're not going to stop your personal friend from earning, let's say, $300 million per year simply because you want to then pass it on to other shareholders. You're good, you're on the board of directors, and he's your friend. Of course, you're going to give him, the largest compensation package, or you're going to wish for him to receive the largest pay package that he can. So we continue. They are not getting higher pay because they are more productive or more skilled than other workers, or because of a shortage of excellent CEO candidates. This is another one that people do, like another fallacy. They say, oh, there's only one person in the world that could run Microsoft. Really? Really? You really think there's only one person in the world that could be the CEO of Microsoft? Like they make every single decision that the executive branch does everywhere all the time? Of course not. These are people that work with other teammates, that work with other sub-CEOs. Like you take a look at Xbox. Phil Spencer is the CEO of like Microsoft Gaming. Then he has his CEO that reports to, which is Satya Nadella. But Satya Nadella doesn't go into every single part of the business and then make key decisions there. No, really, he's just setting the direction and the vision for the entire company as a whole, which is a big job, but it is not a solo job. He doesn't go in and then make sure that every little manager and sub-manager and area manager and small department under him reports directly to him. He's not answering 4,000 emails a day. No, he's got a whole team of lieutenants who then go take his orders and then carry them out. So this idea that he is so unique, so sanctified by the gods with brilliant intelligence and everything, is completely blown out of proportion. There are many people who will be great CEO candidates for any company. I'm not saying there's millions of them, but there's at least thousands of them. So over here it says this escalation of CEO compensation and of executive compensation more generally has fueled the growth for the top 1% company and the top 0.1% of income, leaving fewer gains of the economic growth for ordinary workers and widening the gap between very high earners and the bottom 90%. So another thing that we need to mention here is, of course, we are focused on CEOs because they are like a great titular example. However, this goes for like a lot of the executive suite where they are getting paid vastly more than the typical worker. And what this does is that it increases the pay gap. It increases the pay gap for everyone. And when you have economic inequality, when the wealthy get to hog all of the riches and all of the wealth, what that leads to are work economic conditions and worse life situations for the people at the bottom, for the majority of people, which eventually leads to economic collapse and social distress and so on and so forth. We'll talk about some of those elements, but like I said, we won't be able to explore them all. Okay, so over here you can see that this is quite a long article, but I want to just take a look at little Elon Musk over here. Okay, so in 2021, Elon Musk, CEO of Tesla Monster, exercised $23.5 billion worth of stock options. Now, just a quick note, to mean to exercise your stock options, what that means is this. You are going to exercise the stock option is when an employee buys shares of the company's stock at a predetermined price known as the strike price. So just to bring that back over here. So what he was able to do, I think was for $1.8 billion, okay? He was able to buy $1.8 billion worth of stock at a reduced cost. Think about it as a wholesale price. So it doesn't actually matter what the market value of that stock is at the moment. If he negotiated that he will buy this, let's say at $2 a stock, then he's going to buy it at $2 a stock, even if the stock is actually worth $16 in the market. And so that's how his $1.8 billion worth of stock buy was worth $23.5 billion worth of stock at the end of the day, which is, I mean, to a person who isn't clued into economics like I am, okay, I'm not clued into economics, that's what I'm trying to say, but to a lay person like me, it sounds a little bit like insider trading. Like, what do you mean you are able to buy the stock because you're part of the company or because you negotiated as a CEO at a far lower price than the actual stock is worth? So you could, let's say, okay, hypothetically, okay, buy a stock for $1 billion, right? Because that's his actual, earning for that year. And then you could end up with $20 billion worth of stock. Then the next week, you could simply turn around and then sell off those shares, stock shares that you just bought at a way discounted price and get like $10 or $12 billion out of it, simply because that's what you did. So it is multiplying your income by tremendously ghastly amounts, just to be able to be wealthier. Yeah, that's it. Just make more money. Just literally make more money than you could ever reasonably spend in a lifetime. Ever reasonably spend. Okay, so over here now, when he did this, okay, because he actually did do this, right? That's means by exercise his options, okay. It meant that because inclusion of this extreme outlier would have made this year's numbers incomparable with previous year's numbers, we opted to exclude Tesla and Musk from our sample entirely. So let's get what this, let's understand a little bit what that meant. That meant that he's exercising of his financial power, of his CEO power, and everything like that. His $23.5 billion worth of stock was so enlarged, was such an outlier, was so gross and just outsized of an impact that if they included it in the data that they did about the 350 richest companies in America, it would just skew the results so much as to make them all garbage. They literally had to exclude it so that the data will make some sense. Because think about how much that is, okay? Let's play a little game, okay? Because sometimes we talk about billions of dollars, and I feel like when people hear that, oh, he's earning like $50 billion worth of stock or something, they're like, yeah, sounds about right. It doesn't. Let's play a little game. Let's say you, right, you, the viewer, let's say that I want you to live a comfortable lifestyle, okay? And in fact, to make sure that it's comfortable, I'm going to gift you the comfortable amount. Let's say what I mean by this. First, how much do you think per year will be a comfortable life for you? Okay, like this current lifestyle that you have, stretched over a year, how much does that cost? I'm not saying that you're going to suddenly buy more luxury goods, more Lamborghinis and everything like that. No. Just the same lifestyle that you have now. How much does that cost you in a year? And when I give you this gift, you have to keep the same lifestyle. You still have to go to work just like you do. I mean, if you're working a lot, maybe you can reduce those hours or go part-time, but you're still working. You're not sitting at the beach and just, making money off the crypto coins or whatever, right? How much would that be in a year? Now, let's say that you're very generous or you're very well off as it is today. So let's say it would cost $100,000 just to maintain the lifestyle that you currently have. Okay, but I want you to be comfortable that year. So I'm going to give you, let's say 3 times, okay, what you normally earn in that year or what your lifestyle will normally cost you. So in 1 year, I'm going to give you $300,000. Okay, 300,000. Okay. And I'm going to make sure that you are comfortable. You can spend that money however you want, but remember, you have to keep the same lifestyle, okay? So if you're not driving Lamborghinis and Ferraris, then you won't be driving Lamborghinis and Ferraris, but at least you'll be more comfortable knowing that you have more money in the bank account, and if an medical emergency or whatever kind of emergency occurs, you'll be able to cover it without too much trouble. Okay, so let's do that. Yeah, I think that sounds pretty fair to me. All right, now, I looked it up. I think in 2023, Elon Musk was paid, right? His compensation was $1.4 billion for that year. $1.4 billion. Very something like that. Now, here's the game. Let's find out how much is $1.4 billion. So remember that for you, in order for you to be comfortable, right, in your lifestyle, really comfortable, I was going to give you $300,000. Well, let's see, how long could I keep it up if I have $1.4 billion to spend on you? And this is the answer. 4,666 years. This is how much I could do it. With $1.4 billion at $300,000 per year, you could live comfortably for over 4,000 years. This is what we mean by the gross exaggeration of CEO pay. You really have to understand that. That is the math. $1.4 billion is over 4,000 times what a salary of a meager $300,000 would take. That's ridiculous. And this is what one person is paid in 1 year. This is before he exercises his stock options, and he can multiply this by a factor of like 20, because now his $1.4 billion can now multiply into like $20+ billion worth in stock options, that if he then trades, he can get multiple times the initial $1.4 billion investment. This is what CEO pay does. And this is what these people are trying to distract you from. One person in 1 year earning enough to live a very comfortable, a very generous, an incredibly wealthy $300,000 per year salary. Okay, so we continue, right? It is worth reflecting on what Musk's 2021 pay means for how we interpret CEO compensation. Often, the growing importance of stock-related compensation measures are thought to create a tighter link between CEO performance and CEO pay. The reasoning is that the CEO's main job is to make money for the company's shareholders, and if the company's share price is rising, it is as good a signal as any other that the company is successful, right? So this is another one of those specious arguments where it sounds about right. You're like, yeah, it makes sense, doesn't it? If a CEO is increasing the share price, that's because the company is making more money, and therefore the shareholders are getting more money. The thing though, in reality, not really. So let's keep going, right? There are some grains of truth to this view. All else being equal, tying CEO compensation to growth in shareholders' incomes should better align their sometimes conflicting incentives. However, a number of questions remain about the most efficient way to structure CEO pay. First, interest can be aligned with compensation measures at much lower scales than what commonly prevails. Okay? So yes, it makes some sense to provide stock options to a CEO to incentivize the CEO to take all measures that will boost shareholder returns. But is it really necessary to give a CEO options on 60 million shares of stock? Okay, which is how much he got in 2021. So what they're basically saying there is, yes, you should tie it, but instead of like 16 million shares, can't you just give him options of like 1 million? That will still be a significant amount of money for a single human being on this planet. But hey, let's just go crazy. Another issue involves differentiating share price growth that is company specific versus that which is driven by overall market trends. So this year is a great example for the pandemic. The pandemic increased the value of the share price of like video game companies simply because more people were forced to actually use video games as a means of like distraction and entertainment. That had nothing to do with how well the CEO was doing or how well the company as a whole was doing. That was just a kind of tide wave that lifted every player in that space. And then when it crashes, we do not blame the CEO for the crash. We just say, oh, no, that's just how the market trended. But we did credit the CEO when it was on the way up. Okay. Another thing is that over here, let's see. Finally, the potential role of economic rents in Elon Musk's compensation for 2021 is clear, right? Musk stock options were worth as much as they were because Tesla rose by roughly 300% between the start of the pandemic and mid-2021. So this year is that whole tide, right, that lifted it. His share stock was 300%, right? 3 times worth more money, okay? But here's the thing, okay? There is a lot of speculation that I'm just going to read this straight away, right? We're just going to read this entire paragraph. I apologize, it's a bit long, but we're just going to read all of it because it just explains itself. Now, as DeLong notes, there are many reasons to believe that the underlying fundamental value of Tesla simply does not justify its stock price. So that's really a big thing I was trying to say. Tesla's stock at the moment is in a bit of a bubble. A lot of people have bought into it. A lot of people have assigned value to it. A lot of people have speculated what its value is, but it's actually hyperinflated value. In reality, the company cannot be worth what its stock market price is worth. Okay, so it says there, hypothetically speaking, if Tesla managed to sell 100% of all cars sold in the United States, that is 100% of every car sold in the US is a Tesla car, right? Okay. By the end of the next decade, after 10 years, right? And it made a per car profit roughly 10 times that of the current per car profit of GM, Ford, and Fiat Chrysler. Okay, so not only do they have to sell every single car in the United States, they have to do it for 10 years and they have to make 10 times more profit per car than Ford and GM and all of the other contemporaries and competitors do. Okay, then and only then Tesla's profits will be large enough to justify the current valuation of its stock. If it does not achieve a 100% market share and an extraordinarily high level of profitability, its stock price will eventually fall significantly. So what does this mean? This means that Musk would have been able to personally claim $23.5 billion in purchasing power in 2021 that was never matched by actual economic activity. So what this means is that his company is never going to be worth that, or at least it hasn't been worth that at the moment. But he can sell while it's on this hyperinflated high without actually having given the economic output to increase the price for other shareholders that are further down the line. So if you own, pieces of Tesla stock, and you have this hyperinflated value that doesn't match the actual economic capacity of the thing that you're buying into, that there is a bubble that's waiting to burst. But he can profit from, you can profit from this, of course. Like if you had 10,000 shares, of course you could profit from the moment and sell them now. But here's the problem. While you have 10,000, he has at least 16 million. And that was just from 1 year. So the amount that you can profit versus he can profit is tremendously skewed. And so over here, it continues, and certainly not activity that redounds to the benefit of Tesla shareholders whose wealth was diluted to make room for his stock options. Okay? Now, over here, let's just finish. While we have chosen to remove Musk from this year's CEO sample to simplify data comparably, comparability, it is worth noting that Musk's 2021 compensation is really just different in degree, not in kind, from other CEOs' pay. So Musk is not an outlier. This thing where all of these companies have these oversized market, market rates or market valuations, this is common in like a lot of these companies. They cannot actually back up how much the stock is worth. They don't have it in the assets that they have, in the IP that they have, in the patents that they have. They don't have it. Like, this is just bubble. This is just, it's just this bubble because wealthy people see this and then they invest into it, which leads other people to invest into it, that leads other people to invest into it. Eventually it becomes this whole big thing. And then when the bubble will burst, because eventually it will, it's going to be the people at the bottom that are going to feel the pain. Exact same thing with the whole financial crisis when it came to the housing market. We are literally, headed for another bubble bursting effect. And I'm not an economist. I can't tell you what all of the fallout will be, but I can guarantee you that the person that would have been able to cash out with over $20 billion in his account is not going to feel the pain the same way you and I are going to feel that pain, even if we are not connected to Tesla whatsoever. Because again, Tesla is not some kind of outlier. It's a difference in degree. He is just, completely outrageous. Like, he's beyond outrageous. Other people are just normal levels of outrageous. Okay? Now, over here, it says, it is fundamentally divorced from the long-term economic value he brings to the shareholders, not to mention the workers of his company. And this goes on for a long time. They have lots of data, lots of research. So like I said, here is the title. There is the, institute that publishes this. And again, it's a little bit dense. You have to know your way about economic stocks and everything. Thankfully, it has a PDF download link there, but it just shows you that a lot of these CEOs, it's ridiculous. Now, if you take a look at the highest paid CEOs, okay, all right, over here. So let's take a look. Which year was this? It's 2023. Elon Musk had $1.4 billion. That's what I got the calculation from, for the 4,000 years that you could be paid for very handsomely. But hey, he just gets it in one. But Alexander Karp, 1 billion, right? Huck Etan, 767 million. All the way down to Nikesh Arora, which only has a paltry $266 million. Do you know how much that is? So again, let's do a little game, right? Let's say, how much could you live for on CEO pay for just 1 year? So if you do 266 million, right? And then we divide it by the 300,000 we were going to give you. That means that we could pay you for 886 years. 800. Would you like to live to 800 in relative comfort? Like, you could get paid 300,000 US dollars, move to Mexico, and then just multiply this number by like 12, because that's how many years we could just keep it sustaining for. It's ridiculous, okay? And this is where the economic disparity comes from. This is gross. This is exactly what these people are trying to distract us from. Like, think about it. This is something we should be doing something about. This is something we should at least bitch about on Twitter. Like what? But no, instead we're not doing this. What we're doing instead is we're saying, oh, Jordan from this game is woke. Oh, Abby killed Joel. Like, wokeism is perfect. It's the perfect font for this. It's an umbrella, a shield behind which all of these real issues can hide. Okay, so now that was the economic reality that I want to just give you a sample of. But now I want to talk about the societal impact. Because whilst the people at the top get to have money that us mortals can literally not comprehend, right? Remember, the person at the bottom of the list could live 886 years on a really great salary. Listen, if you earn $300,000 a year, you have a fantastic salary. You absolutely do. No, you don't need a private jet. No, you don't need a vacation home in like the Alps. You have a great salary. You can take care of you and yours, and you're in an envious position. But when a person can earn 886 times more than you in 1 year, and is still at the bottom of the list, yo, we have a lot of things to solve, man. Hey, listen, let me put it this way. My generation, right? I'm 32. My generation has about, let's give it 10 to 15 years to course correct all of this. All of this. Because if we don't course correct it, by the time our children grow to be my age, it'll be too late. We will just be headed to like Cyberpunk 2077 levels of disaster. Just economic collapse on a worldwide scale. Just climate change on a worldwide scale. Just huge environmental, natural, societal disasters and calamities on a worldwide scale that is going to take us generations to claw our way out of, only for us to repeat the same mistakes again. Like, literally, this is it. If you're a millennial, you are the last potential stopgap. This is what we have to fix. But no, they decided to distract us. They make our games political so that we don't realize that our lives are so much more political. Our ability to afford housing and groceries and everything else is in such danger that we just don't do anything about it. Because that's it. Wokeism is a drug. But more than a drug, it's a distraction. It's a distraction away from that. So with all of these pressures, what are we doing? Okay? Because if you believed in certain promises, you would have believed that going to school, doing great there, going to university or college, depending on where you come from in the world, doing great there, and then earning a job and working hard was going to net certain benefits to you. And so we turn our attention to China. Again, just as a simple little sample, a lot of this is indicative and it's true all over the world, but we've got to have one touchstone so that we can just keep the conversation forward. So I'm not picking on like East Asia or Chinese viewers or anything like that, or I don't even want to talk about the Chinese government, but we do have to talk a little bit about one particular moment, okay? So over here in China, they have the 996. Okay, and 996 simply means that the term 996 describes the notoriously grueling work schedule adopted by tech companies in China, whose employers are known to toil from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week or longer. So over here, 996 basically means that you work 12 hours a day and you work 6 days a week. And this has huge societal impacts, not only on China and East Asia, but all over the world. A lot of people in the West will say that they don't have a 996, but then they work 2 or 3 jobs, which basically is the equivalent of 996. 996, by the way, is 72 hours per week. How many people have you seen that pride themselves on working 60, 80, 100-hour weeks? This is something, again, that it's like, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. It's everywhere around the world. It's everywhere around the globe. Okay? And that's because with huge economic disparity, with CEOs that are able to make more in 1 year than 1,000 people will ever be able to consume in a lifetime, we have to be like realistic. This is the other side of it. Everything has a cost. You don't get to give a person like Elon Musk a grossly outrageous salary and think that will have no net result on other people around the world. Of course it does. The 996 is simply one symptom of that, but like I said, it's a nice coin term that we can touch to. But when you compare that a lot of people all around the world, including the United States and including in Australia, have to work multiple jobs and you start adding up those hours, it doesn't look that much different from a 12-hour day. Sometimes a 12-hour day will be a huge reduction for a lot of these people. There are people that pride themselves on working 16-hour days, or pride themselves on being available to their companies 24/7, where they will get up at 2 or 3 a.m. to answer work emails and other things, that are, hugely important, simply because they want to stay in the thing. So let's take a look a little bit. Okay, so let's see. In some workplaces, such as fledgling startups, 996 is voluntarily undertaken by ambitious entrepreneurs, hoping that long hours and hard work translates into business success. Elsewhere, including at established tech giants, employees across the ranks are expected to clock up long hours to show their commitment and dedication. Workers often consider it an unwritten rule that they should stay past the official hours, regardless of whether that extra time spent actually results in higher productivity. Peer pressure is a major factor. So just a quick little note. In many counter examples, it has been shown in many studies around the world that reducing the amount of work from a 40-hour week to a 32-hour week, usually by, giving up Friday. So it basically workers will work from Monday to Thursday, actually increases productivity. So instead of working more or longer hours, you should actually encourage your workers to work less. And what that does is that they maximize the amount of productivity they do in the remaining 32 hours. And this is just a much healthier life balance. Other people have done it by implementing 4-hour work days. So some days they might work 4 hours, some days they might work 6 hours, some days they will work all 8 hours. But essentially, cutting about 8 hours from the standard 9 to 5 has been shown to be beneficial. Obviously, you can't just keep going down. You can't reduce it to like a 12-hour, work week and think you're going to get the same productivity or higher productivity than you do on a 40-hour week. But there's a lot of wastage. And when you cut it down, people are happier, people are more productive, people are more innovative. And that is just a quick little thing. Like, again, go ahead, research it for yourself if you don't believe me. Okay? But we can continue over here. Okay? So over here, blah, 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 blah. Let's look at some of the consequences, right? One Beijing-based engineer at a cloud service provider said in 2019 interview that managers patrolled the office at night to see who was still working and judge performances accordingly. Another engineer who worked at Baidu said that leaving at 6 p.m. was regarded as early. Okay, remember that these are people that start at 9 a.m. So 6 p.m. is 9 hours. Okay, even though the company does not officially enforce a 996 schedule. From time to time, Chinese media and internet users have attributed reports of premature deaths of young tech workers to punishing workloads. In 2015, a Tencent developer collapsed and died while walking with his pregnant wife. A year later, a 34-year-old deputy chief editor of the I don't even want to say that. I can't even try. The owner of an online forum suffered a fatal cardiac arrest at a Beijing subway station. In 2018, a 25-year-old employee at a drone manufacturer, DJI, also died from a cardiac arrest. So you see, these issues have real consequences. This isn't just like, oh, fun, or this isn't just like, what do we call it? When people say that they are working overtime or they're overloaded or they have burnout, for like a month or two, whatever. No, this is serious. People die. People at very young age. How do we have a society where people like age 34 or 25 are dying from cardiac arrest? How? How do we have this society? And remember that if you take a look at China specifically, right? They have some of the most grueling student test environment and academic study environments in the world. I think they have the most grueling one in the world, closely followed by South Korea. Their tests that they do, I think it might be the civil entrance test. I might be getting that wrong. But basically, what that test is the world's hardest test. They have a very similar one in South Korea. And again, this isn't about like, oh, students are motivated. No, this is about exploitation. This is about a society that has instilled in these young people such fear of being outclassed by their competitor and has created such a competitive environment that they literally sometimes kill themselves while studying because they forget to eat, they forget to sleep, they just burn themselves out. Where there are huge hospitals that around the test dedicate entire floors to simply bringing in patients that are just so exhausted from studying, so burnt out that they can't even make it through the day. They literally just collapse and fall. This is what we do. This is what we at the bottom 99% of the population do. In order to make people at the top, wealthier than they've ever been, wealthier than they could ever spend, no matter how gross their tastes are, no matter how many yachts they bought, we just work ourselves to the bone, to literal death, and then this will just keep going. So over here it says that to date, no major tech firms in China have been punished for encouraging or forcing employees to work excessive long hours. Now, in the spirit of transparency, you need to know that recently China has officially cracked down on the whole 996 environment. They have made it illegal pretty much. However, in a typical CCP fashion, they have paid lip service and they have said it's illegal, but how well enforced those policies are, remain to be questioned. So again, if you want to go ahead and take a look, you can go ahead and take a look at that. Now, over here, we need to take a look at this. The billionaire founder of Alibaba Group, the parent company of South China Morning Post, called the hash schedule. So this is Jack Ma, by the way. A huge blessing that many companies and employees don't have the opportunity to have. Adding that it was the same work ethic that helped propel China's tech giants to their size and status today. Okay, so Ma also called on Alibaba employees to embrace the 996. If you join Alibaba, you should get ready to work 12 hours a day. Otherwise, why do you come to Alibaba? We don't need those who comfortably work 8 hours. So you see over here, this guy, okay, billionaire that he is, right? He founded his company and everything like that. And now he's saying like, you should embrace this. You should work 12 hours a day. What else are you supposed to do? You know? And the thing is this. We can all recognize that to create $1 billion corporation will take incredible amount of work. In fact, I could even agree that even at the later stage, because he's no longer the CEO at the moment, but even at the later stage, right, of his career, he could still have been working 12 hours per day. But then we also have to think about what was the compensation for his 12 hours a day, potentially, versus other people's 12 hours a day. Okay, so over here in in 2023, right, his net worth was estimated to be $34.1 billion. So that's another thing that a lot of rich people do. They somehow use the example of them working really, really hard as justification for why other workers should work really, really hard. But here's the thing, right? A typical worker in the Alibaba company, right, the tech company, working 12-hour days will see nowhere near the same level of compensation as Jack Ma does. If you paid me, I don't know, $80 million in a year, I will work 12-hour days, 6 days a week, no problem. You will too. I work 100-hour days. I only need to do it for 1 year, right? Because I just don't need that much more than $80 million in my life. But the point is, all of us would work this amount for even for 10 years if we were given huge compensation packages. But he's not talking about, his C-suite executives. He's not talking about his managers or the people that are actually being paid a substantial amount of money. He's talking about the people that can work 12-hour days in China and then barely make ends meet. A lot of these people are broke. A lot of them, the average salary in China, right, was, the median salary in China was $53,000. So why he earned, approximately, why he's worth at least $34.1 billion, he's talking to the person that's only earning about $53,000 after working 12-hour days for 1 year. Again, if you were being paid, name your price, 5 million, 7 million, 10 million per year, you could sustain that. You could probably sustain for 3 years and then you can retire. You never have to worry about it. And if that was the kind of like profit sharing that these companies encourage, where you could go in, work your 5 years at your 996 schedule, and then after that you could retire. Like imagine if you could work from like the age of 25 to the age of 30, amass a vast fortune, and then simply retire at the age of 30. A lot of people would be fine with this schedule. A lot of people would be huge supporters of this schedule with happiness in their heart. But these discrepancies, okay, is exactly what people have to live with. And then these people at the top are just pretending, right, that it's somehow okay, it's somehow great. You should aspire to it. You should come to my company prepared to work 12 hours a day for a pitiful salary, and you will never, and they will then go the character in front of you like, oh, yes, the system is fucked. But hey, if you do it, right, if you stand out, if you do it, you can be the guy that moves up, becomes a manager, then a local manager, then a state manager, then a countryman, and you will get the compensation. But here's the problem. Every single one of your other peers and employees are also staying back and doing the extra work, because that's where the peer pressure comes from. You want to get promoted so that your 996 is elevated and is compensated better than the other person's work. But the problem is that the other person, right, also has to, also does the same thing as you. So now you have to stay back even longer, make yourself more available, or be willing to get up at 1:30 a.m. in the morning and get on a call for 3 hours just to show your dedication is extra than everybody else. Then the next day, when they find out that you got up at 1:30 in the morning, now everyone wants to get up at 1:30 in the morning because, again, you cannot be the only one that wants that promotion. So the best analogy for this is this. You are in a movie theater and then one person stands up in order to see the screen better. Then the person behind him stands up also in order to get to see the screen better. Eventually, everyone in the movie theater stands up in order to keep being able to see the screen. Then eventually, one person stands up on the seat in order to see the screen. And eventually, everyone behind them recognizes that now they have to stand up on the seat too in order to get to see the screen. So what happens there is that you are putting extra effort for the same or the worst experience. And that's the fallacy of the 996. You were supposed to do it in order to show your dedication to the company and to show that you are worth promoting. However, because everyone saw you doing that and then they matched your output, now what you've done is average again. Now you need to go even more and even beyond at your current salary with some hope that one day, eventually, you'll get to see the next level. But everyone else is there too. This, by the way, is also what happens with, like I said, the Chinese education system. It's a very typical example is that a uni professor or even a high school professor will come in and then they will set a task, an essay that will take 5,000 words. 5,000 words is a huge amount of words, right? It's crazy. Usually my longest university essay was at 3,000 words, and this was the end of a project. It was a group project. I had to write pretty much all of it because all of my classmates came from different backgrounds, so you had to have cohesion in the group report. So even though they supplied the parts, I had to pretty much rewrite the entire project, right? That was about 3,000 words. So 5,000 words is already huge, okay? But then, guess what? A lot of Chinese students will want to get the best mark in the class. They want to get extra high marks. So what they will do is that they will submit an essay that is worth that contains 8, 10, or even 11,000 words or more. The problem is when they first do that, they get the thing. But then in the next assignment, people now understand that in order to get the best mark, I have to go way above what their minimum is. So now you have everyone in the class trying to submit 8 to 10 to even more thousands of words, even though the teacher never asked for that many. And so what happens is that now, when you submitted 8,000 words, you were above average. You went above the grain and you got the highest mark. But now 8,000 happens to be the average in the class. Now you have to submit 10,000 in order to stand out. But then 10,000 becomes the average. Now you have to submit 15,000. And that's how they end up studying for so long. That's how they end up working themselves to the bone. Because everybody is chasing this carrot and putting, extra effort to be ahead of the pack, but then the pack catches up to them, just like the peloton. You ever seen like a bicycle race where one person breaks out, but then eventually the peloton just rides them down and they're back average again and they can't put themselves in the front? It's exactly what this is. And there's no, China, encourages this behavior very subtly, not that subtly, but they don't want to say, hey, we like this, we want this. No, what they will say is that, oh, well, we didn't ask you to. Knowing perfectly well that they also didn't put any safety guards. Whereas over here, in my education system, in Australia, there was always a plus or minus 10%. So if you had a 2,000 word essay, if you had more than 2,200, they would just toss it out. So that forced you to kind of limit yourself, right? There was no benefit in you doing way more, like double the amount of word count, because they would just get tossed out. And so, Chinese, schools could have easily for years implemented such a system where they give you 5,000 words plus or minus 10%, and that would have curbed, this kind of like competitive, destruction that they have. But again, certain cultural differences mean that it is not implemented, or at least not according to my research. Again, do your research. Now, let's talk about, again, the societal effect. So first things first is that people overwork themselves at work, the whole 9-9-16. Another effect is that young people in China shy away from face-to-face encounters. And you really have to understand this. So from high school, okay, they are in an environment where they often work or study 14-hour days. They go home only to sleep, eat one meal, and then they're back on the grind. Then at the workplace, when they finally finish high school and university, and now they are at the workplace, the same thing continues or gets even worse. Now, when are these people, these young people, going to develop the social skills necessary? Okay, so over here I have a fun example for you. We're just going to read one of these things, but there's a lot more in the article. Again, here is the whole kind of like place to find it in case you're interested, in case I will get you added to the description below. But over here we have social anxiety disorders inhibit personal relationships. When Beijing University student Zhang Kunbeng, sorry about getting that wrong, started work as an intern at a fashion magazine, Marie Claire, in the Chinese capital last year, it took him about a month before he asked his colleagues for the password to the office Wi-Fi because he did not want to bother them. So you see, these social anxieties, they show up in real ways in people. This is what we're being distracted from. You have a lot of like lonely single men, usually young men, right? Especially in cultures like East Asia, where typically the male baby, the male, presence in the family, the male heir was far more desired than a female heir or a female baby and everything like that. So you end up with all of these young men that have had no real opportunities to socialize, to visit friends after school, to talk to the opposite gender, to flirt or to romance people in real life. So they have all of this huge anxiety around social interactions, and it shows up in their day-to-day life. Okay, so over here it continues. He used to link his phone to an office computer each day to access the internet. However, at some point this became too much trouble, so he summoned up the courage to ask a colleague for the password. Isn't that ridiculous? Isn't that ridiculous? Look what the damage we are doing to young people. If you're a young person like me, look at the damage that's been done to us. Because again, while this is China, and while that might seem like an extreme form, of what it is that we're discussing today, it's not that dissimilar to things that happen all over the world. South Korea, Japan, a lot of countries in East Asia can directly relate to these examples because they have very similar social work dynamics and structures as China does. But even again, you take it all the way to the West, you take it to the UK, you take it to the US, you take it to Australia, you take it to, France or whatever, and you're going to see a lot of parallels in these things, okay? Now, let's see. Like Zhang, an increasing number of young people are experiencing social anxiety disorders and feel at a loss when they have to interact with others in person, as they have become accustomed to holding such discussions online. A recent China Youth Daily survey of 2,000 people in the 18 to 35 age group found that, now listen to this, 26%, 26.7, let's say 27%, 27% of the respondents have difficulty with real-life social interactions, and 17% have problems with such interaction online. Moreover, 21% say that they have problems interacting with others online and offline. So let's put that together. You have 27% that don't like it offline, like in person. You have 17% that don't like it online, and they have 21% that don't like it in either place. That's crazy. That's crazy, right? So that means that you have what? Over 30% of the youth that just do not like social interactions whatsoever. Okay. The same survey also found that 40% of the respondents say that they avoided social interactions. The main reasons for young people steering clear of social interactions, including facing too much pressure from daily life, like working in 996, a lack of social experience, like working your bone just to study all of the time when you were younger, courage and confidence, and only having a small social circle. Again, because you had no opportunity to make friends. And there is this game, I think it's in China. It's called like The Travel Frog. It's a mobile game. And it's a game that blew up in popularity in East Asia because you play essentially as a frog. Well, you don't play as the frog. You have to take care of the frog. Like it was like a you know, those things like a pet you have to take care of. But the frog will sometimes just go on travels and adventures, and it will just leave your house, and you just have to wait. You just have to wait for the frog to come back. Yeah, let me take a look over here. Jesus Christ. Let's see. Let me put up these things here. Okay. Right. You know what? Let's go to Wikipedia. Good old Wikipedia, always asking for money. Okay, so let's go and kind of. Honestly, if you do have money for Wikipedia, I guess you should give them some. Right. Okay. Travel Frog is a free-to-play mobile game developed by Hit Point Co. Operates in Kyoto. Released in 2017. All right. So the gameplay: the player prepares the frog, named by the player, for its journey and sends it off on its way. The frog returns from a trip that lasts from a few hours to a few days and brings back its local specialties from its destination, as well as photos of its memories for the trip, which the player can view. The player cannot interact with the frog during its journey, but only waits for its return. Now, listen, this game blew up, okay? Via performance in the Chinese market. Travel Frog was number one in the free game category on the Chinese App Store for more than 2 weeks in January 2018, even though the Chinese translation was not yet available, right? There were also some connections, blah, blah, blah. On April 2, 2019, Alibaba Group announced that it had cooperated with Hipponco and obtained an authorized agent to issue the official Chinese version of Traveling Frog. And so now you have Chinese content and everything else in there. But the point is, this blew up. And the reason this blew up is that people form parasocial relationships with the Travel Frog, with a lot of people in China identifying the frog as a son, or I guess a daughter. But the thing that they were seeking there, the thing that made them feel really good and connected to this game, is the fact that the frog could go to travel. They empathized so strongly with their desire to not be tied down by societal, economic, and familial pressures that they wish they were living the life of the frog. That's why it became so popular. Like, this is crazy. And what I mean, like, video games intersect every single part of everything that we are talking about here. It's very important that you know that art is political. Travel Frog is political. It doesn't matter whether you think it's silly or not, but the point is, it is political. And so, over here, if you take a look at the official page, look at this. Unleash your inner desire for freedom. That's literally, they know who they're targeting. They know that these people are so stuck. They feel so stuck in their life, in their work, in their familial circumstances. They feel so unable to travel and meet new people that they empathize, where this is the way that they choose to, like, let the desire. It's literally cathartic for them to have a quote-unquote son figure, right, that just gets to travel and come back and tell you about the souvenirs and the gifts and the adventures that they made. Okay? On a I guess a darker turn, okay, a lot more people in China, okay, have also just decided to remain single, okay? And again, this is because in China's unique context, they had the one-child policy from 1980s until 2015, something like that. Don't quote me on that, by the way. I do not have all of these facts in my mind. But essentially what this has done is that a lot of people now have decided to remain single, right? So over here, let's go ahead and let me first zoom this in, because I know a lot of people are on mobile phones and that can be hard. Okay. Let's read a little bit from this article over here. I think here we are. This should do it. Oh no, that didn't do it. Let me go ahead and hit. Oh well, I did hit it, but whatever. Let's read. In a country that has seen a continuous decline in marriage and birth rates in recent decades, young Chinese women and men are increasingly opting for solo lifestyles, an alternative that was once unheard of in collectivist China. In 2020, the population of unmarried persons between the age of 20 and 49 reached 134 million. That's ridiculous. Okay. Echoing a movement that has been seen on the rise around the world, particularly in East Asian nations like South Korea and Japan, a growing number of young Chinese are choosing to live alone, stay unmarried, and engage in solo lifestyles. Now, over here, this sounds almost positive, right? This sounds like a person now has a capacity to choose from themselves whether or not they want to date, whether they want to remain single, whether they want to marry, whether they want to live with other people. But in reality, there's the darker reality there, and the most common reality is that they don't really have a choice. Like we said before, they have huge social anxieties, so they often don't know how to relate to other people in the real world. And then also, because of the economic return that they get from all these tech companies is so minimal, a lot of them can't even afford the time, the energy, or the money to go out and socialize with other people. And even if they could, now how would they find friends? And I mean, finding friends is a terribly difficult thing, regardless of where you are around the world. You could be in the most social of places, in the most social of cultures, and it could still be really difficult to make friends, like really good friends. But when you are in a culture like those seen in East Asia or any facsimile of that, it becomes increasingly exponentially difficult. Now, over here, we have the risks and rewards of flying solo. Amidst the risk of demographic collapse, because that is literally what's going to happen. When I tell you that these are calamities that are coming our way, this is a reality in China. They are at risk of demographic collapse. A rapidly expanding elderly population and other issues, China's younger generations face several challenges in the future as they grapple with some of their own existential dilemmas. Some young people in China choose solo living as a preferred lifestyle choice, which celebrates autonomy and mobility. Others opt into it because they don't see better futures in the demographic and economic lottery. Because that's really what it has become. Almost all around the world, you kind of have to win the economic lottery, which doesn't necessarily mean that you win the actual lottery, like you go and you play numbers and you get your jackpot. But it could mean that you find the economic lottery of actually finding a good workplace, or the economic lottery of actually being paid well for the amount of time and being compensated well. At this point, it has become like a lottery, because if everyone is working as hard as possible, as many jobs as possible, the thing that might differentiate you from the person next to you might just be good luck. And at the end of the day, that's no different than winning a lottery. Okay? Now, is being single a choice or something that is false? Mike Innes questions. And if it's a choice, is that something that's written out of a positive orientation, like the desire to pursue goals that matter to them, or not? For those who are forced, either out of circumstances like lack of social mobility or societal norms about standards for choosing a partner, it does play into these negative feelings about the future outlook. So over here, also, the Chinese government, to be fair, again, has had policies, by the way, just letting you know, that have tried to take steps to encourage people to have more kids, to get married, and to kind of like give social support, almost to the point where I think they have like compensation programs, like government welfare programs for like paying you so you can afford your baby for a while. And then apparently, some of them have also proposed, okay? So it says here, while the government has been trying to create a carrot in terms of policy support for families with children, it's entirely possible that they opt for a stick approach in the future to disincentivize those who go without, something like a singles tax even. So China, of course, has a unique political environment, right? Or at least it's quite different from what we have in the Western nations and everything like that. You know, authoritative governments and everything. Authoritative, right? Authoritative. I'm just going to say that. Okay. Governments mean that a lot of things that they might be able to do will not really fly in a, republic democracy thing that we kind of pretend to have over here. And this idea of a singles tax kind of gave me a shock, because it's literally punishing you for the environment that they created for you. Because again, if you have no social skills because you had to work your butt off 14 hours a day, because this is a very typical schedule for students in high school, right? And you have no social skills, you have no game, you don't know how to talk to girls, you don't even know how to talk to guys, you don't even know how to make friends, right? And then you realize that at the paltry amount that you are being paid, while the CEOs of Alibaba get like billions of dollars of net worth and millions of dollars of compensation per year, and you're getting basically like $53,000 per year, then you realize that you have no actual like economic prosperity that you're ever going to get. So that just makes you more depressed. And how are you then going to go out there and make yourself have children and be in a marriage. And now some politicians are apparently, a little hush hush, but a little warning, talking about taxing you because you couldn't get a partner. That's ridiculous. And also, don't forget that because of their one-child policy, because of China's historical preference for male heirs, it means that there are 70 million more men than women in China at the moment, at least for the young ages. Again, don't quote me on that. Go research it for yourself. You love it. You love doing research. Okay? But 70 million more men. So that means that there's not enough to go around. Unless you're going to marry these men, to I guess multiple men for a single girl, but that will never fly. But it's just mathematically, the math is a mathing. Even if you impose a single tax, even if people force themselves to live as couples, not out of love or desire or even economic gratification, but rather as a way to avoid other incentives like this, there wouldn't be enough girls to go around. And we all know that China is a super insular culture. Not only insular in terms of like how many immigrants come in, but they really do not want their population to be influenced by the ideas of the West, hence the censorship machine and regime and everything else like that. Again, I'm not even trying to like get at China, but these are realities. And again, the reality of having way more men than women in order for the population rate to like keep steady and for you to not just have an ever expanding elderly population, that is a reality in a lot of East Asian countries at the least. But again, aspects of this are transferable all over the world. We have a lot of men who don't know how to talk to women, who don't know how to socialize with women, who prefer to interact online because they feel afraid of social anxieties and pressures, especially around women. And that goes into the whole, we call them incels over here and everything like that. But a large part of that is, part of incel is made from involuntary celibate. So a person that's single without actually desiring it. And I guess you could say that technically this would apply to a lot of people in China, but it also, applies, of course, to us over here because, yeah. Oh, and of course, this will have economic impact. This will just make things worse. Like, these are just all things that you have to realize how fruitless it is to complain about the skin color of a character in the game when these are real issues that we should be talking about instead. But don't worry, we're not done. I have a whole this video is going to be like 7 hours long if I keep going at this pace. But you know what, I created this channel so that I could talk about what is it, the thing. So far, I want to talk about the distraction, right? We've had the distraction from the economic systems that we are currently in, which means that you can't afford a house, which I see you as are being paid too much. We've had the societal impact, which increased the crazy work schedules that these people are trying to impose on us, and the way that has, further consequences when it comes to even birth rates and marriage rates and, general ability to interact with people. But now I want to talk to you about what is it that they're actually distracting us from. And I'm going to take two quick examples. Since we've been on China, we're going to stay on China just for a little bit longer because I want to talk about the inadequate government reaction to these realities that has nothing to do with actually solving the problem, but is rather like performance theater legislation, okay? And the perfect example here, the best example I can think of is this. China bans men it sees are not masculine enough from TV. So if you've ever noticed like K-pop artists or, or like Japanese male actors and things like that, you may have noticed that a lot of them have faces, visages, images of themselves that would be seen as effeminate to a Western gaze, right? We'll look at this man and we're like, they look a little bit feminine. You take a look at this and he's like, that's a pretty boy and everything like that, right? And this has been a huge staple of Chinese culture for the longest time, right? And for many cultural reasons, not just related to like Western imperialism. However, China, as you can see, Xi Jinping, he's not a fan of this, okay? He thinks to himself like, no, our men have to be, more macho, more strong, showing more masculine traits, especially ones that, again, the West would identify with, okay? So over here it says, China's government banned effeminate men on TV and told broadcasters Thursday to promote revolutionary culture, broadening a campaign to tighten control over business and society and enforce official morality. President Xi Jinping has called for a national rejuvenation with tighter Communist Party control of business, education, culture, and religion. Companies and the public are under increasing pressure to align with his vision for a more powerful China and healthier society. So, a lot of over here, what we care about is this. Broadcasters must resolutely put an end to sissy men and other abnormal aesthetics, the National Radio and TV Administration said, using an insulting slang term for effeminate men, Nyang Pao, or literally girly guns, okay, so on and so forth. This is a kind of legislation that they are throwing in our face, pretending to be fixing problems that we should be caring about. Here's the thing. First of all, when they talk about Nyang Pao, I want to show you what the kind of men they're talking about. They're talking about these guys, okay? Now, take a look. Again, from a Western perspective, these men seem to, be, exemplars of what we consider to be effeminate. They have small, not so broad shoulders. They have rather small faces. They have very soft, jawlines. They have very pale skin, which again has a whole cultural context in China and East Asia and everything like that. They seem to be well-doled and well-styled and everything like that. Listen, this is not to say that one is better than another, okay? I'm not here to argue that. But I am here to say that this is the aesthetic that they decided to go after. And that's the kind of performance theater legislation that I want to target. Because a lot of these governments are putting legislations like this. Tell me, what the fuck do I care? If I was a Chinese person and I was working in 996 and I was being paid, let's say the equivalent of like 50,000 US dollars, what the fuck do I care if this actor looks more feminine or masculine or whatever? It has nothing to do with me. It doesn't affect the price of my tea. What I want to do is actually get out of this system. What I want to do is actually do things, right, that are going to make me have real economic power in the country that I'm in because I'm working hard for it. That's what I would care about. And it's the exact same thing that video game makers are doing. They are giving us this whole argument about woke versus woke, anti-woke, or pretty characters. Now a lot of people are saying, oh, we have the Eastern developers versus Western developers, and some developers are promoting really exaggerated female beauties or body proportions that are very pleasing to the male gaze, while Western developers are making women ugly and terrible. What the fuck do you care, bro? What do you care? Does that pay for your mortgage? Are you kidding? I saw a post that compared Storm from Marvel Rivals to another black character from a Western game. And I was like, dude, does this pay for my bills? If I did this, if I went to Naughty Dog or if I went to any Western developer and I say, hey, you know what? Make the women in your game sexy again. Would that help me out of the economic depraved situation that I'm currently in? Would that help my neighbor? Would that help my friends? Would that help my family? No. Why are we caring about this? Because we're being distracted. This is all it is. It's all a distraction. What are we doing? What are we doing? And our governments are participating. This is what I mean by wokeism is a joke and we are the punchline. Because this is what they put in front of us. Or they are banning effeminate men. Okay? Can you ban completely outside CEO pay instead? Or can you rectify some of that, gap so that the people at the bottom that are actually doing the work get more compensation from the company that they are actually pushing to be worth billions of dollars? No. Instead, you go after this. Who asked you? Who asked you to go after this? This is crazy. Another one that we have in the West, right? Because we are not banning effeminate men, you might be thinking. Another one that we have in the men is this. We want to ban immigrants. Okay? Over here, I just found this article. The 14 most common arguments against immigration and why they're wrong. Now, if you care, again, here's the title. There is the thing. You can go find the link yourself. You know how to use Google. Okay? But we're just going to go over the first 3 arguments quickly. Immigrants will take American jobs, lower our wages, and especially hurt the poor. Okay? It says immigrants are typically attracted to growing regions and they increase the supply and demands of the size of the economy once they are there, expanding employment opportunities. Just to quickly expand on that, while it's true that some immigrants will compete with some natives for the same jobs, okay, they also will increase their demand side because they have to buy a lot more things when they first arrive. So they contribute to the economy, they don't just remove from it. And most of the time, they have a pretty much a net zero impact, okay? So over here it says, immigrants likely compete most directly against other immigrants. So the effect on less skilled native-born Americans might be very small or even positive, okay? Now we go to argument number 2. Immigrants abuse the welfare state. Most legal immigrants do not have access to means-tested welfare for their first 5 years here, with few exceptions that are mostly determined on the state level and funded with state taxes. Illegal immigrants don't have access at all, except for emergency Medicaid. Again, immigrants are not making your things more expensive, boy. They're not wasting your government resources. The third argument, immigrants increase the budget deficit and government debt. And then he says over there, after multiple studies, blah, 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 immigrants in the United States have about a net zero impact of government budgets. And there are 14 more arguments, as you can see over here. And this is a thorough read. Go ahead, bookmark it, and, take it one bit at a time. But this is another thing that governments all around the world, right? In this rise of like the far right and the alt-right governments that we've had, the very first things that they want to do is close borders. And what I also call that is theater. Okay, it's theater legislation, because at the end of the day, it won't actually help you. It won't help me. It won't help you. In fact, it might be a detriment to you and me, because these arguments are solid. They are backed by actual empirical evidence. You see, a lot of the people that are trying to keep us away from the truth, what they do is that they rely on feeling. And that is exactly what they do, right? They rely on the feeling that somehow you are being, taken from, you're being stolen from, you are having this moment where you should feel fragile because this thing that you love is now changing and everything like that. In reality, it's not happening. Now, guys, listen. I've spoken a lot, right? We've done, an hour and 30 minutes. All about the distraction. Now, I want you to know that the next part, we're just going to quickly touch on, is the grift. Because while I pose to you that wokeism came from the top, right? Well, I mean, it didn't come from the top. It came from like a grassroots movement, but it was weaponized by the wealthiest of the class and, these CEOs and politicians that are trying to keep us from real issues. I want you to know that there are certain people, right, that have realized exactly what it was. But instead of doing what I'm doing and warning you against it, they realized they could profit from it. Because outrage culture is in. We have never been more outraged as a people. And we have never been more outraged over things that matter so little. Like, think about it. All of the internet outrage that you see is completely gone and divorced from actual issues that matter to people. And whenever you try to bring up an issue that might matter to real people in the real way, like the 996 or anything, you're called the woke, you're called leftist, you're called the socialist, you're just shut down in the conversation. Because that's just the environment that we're in. So instead, here's what you do. You become a grifter. You're a person who realizes what this system is doing, and instead of warning people, you try to profit from it. And outrage culture is all over YouTube. You know them, right? You know the Asmongols, you know the Grums on Twitter, you know all of these accounts. Just go ahead and, like I said, type in Intergalactic, do some research of your own on YouTube, and then see how many things decry the wokeness. All of those are grifters. All of them. Most of them will buy the game. Most of them will love the game. Most of them will tell you that it wasn't woke after the game, or that it wasn't that bad, it wasn't that woke, or the wokeness didn't get in the way of the game. Oh man, because they're lying. Because true wokeism is identified by its fraudulent nature. They don't believe this shit. But they realize that by making you believe this shit, they can actually make money. They can make profit. I've seen so many videos with millions of views decrying pronouns. Dude, okay. between you and me, pronouns are annoying. Let's just say, there it is. Pronouns are annoying. They are annoying. I don't, listen, personally, me, I don't care for them. I don't want to deal with them. Listen, if a person wanted me, right, even though they were born scientifically, genetically as a woman, and they wanted me to like identify them as a man, I would just do it. Would it be a little bit annoying? Sure. Okay, whatever. But again, do I care? Do I care? Do you care? Do you really care? Do you really care? And then if that person had to go to the bathroom, would you follow them to see which bathroom they chose? Really? Do you really care? I don't. I certainly don't. Listen, if you gave me $80 million every year, I'll make time. Sure, I'll make the time to care. But until I have that level of economic freedom, until I have that level of peace, comfort, not just in my finances, but with my family, with my friends, with my environment, with my place in the world, with my sense of purpose, with my, divine or like Christian values, why would I care? Why would you care? You don't care. Let me tell you, even if you care, these grifters, these people making you angrier on the internet, they don't care. They're just making money off of you. They're just profiting from you. That's literally it, Because what people quickly realize is that in this age of economic decline and systems-wide decline, the new best way to make money for the average Joe is to be an influencer. And in an age where outrage and hate sells, the best thing that you can do is to be a hate-mongering, fear-mongering grifter of an influencer. Like that's basically it. That's what sells. That's what the algorithm likes on every social media platform. So I just want you to know that the YouTubers, the Twitter accounts that constantly peddle this whole wokeism narrative, oh, this is woke, that's not woke, this is anti-woke, this is woke about this is this type of woke versus that type of woke, without any notion or any callback to the original meaning of the word, then you need to know that you're in the presence of a grifter. That person might care about the issue, might even believe that, but what they care about more and what they believe in more is the economic output that they will be able to receive from you. And they do it well. And the good thing is that, like I said, wokeism is universal. Okay? In French, we call it a passe-partout. It means it can go everywhere, right? And so you can have wokeism happening in the video game sphere, you can have it in football, you can have it in sports, you can have it at the Olympics. Remember when people got all annoyed because like the Olympics opening ceremony in France was based off like this work of the gods, and they thought it was the Last Supper, but then they realized it wasn't. But of course they didn't, because they didn't actually do any research. They were just scared about being outraged. That's what we serve now. That's what we serve on the internet now. We serve instant outrage. Like, remember when it take you 90 seconds to like prepare instant noodles and we call that instant? Now we'll make you outrage in 9 seconds, and that's if we're bad. Nowadays, these grifters can make you outrage from the thumbnail. That's it. You just see it and you just feel this rage. And that rage to you is just negative emotions flooding your system. To them, it's literally money. You are literally, oh man. These people are making money off of your rage. That's what's happening. Excuse me as I just pour water down here. There we go. You gotta keep hydrated. You've got to keep hydrated. Sorry for the bumping on the things and stuff. Yep. Now let's talk about video games. Isn't that nice? Isn't that nice in a video game channel where we talk about video games and the impact that it has? I want to talk about certain issues that we should be talking about as gamers when it comes to video games. What are we being distracted from? Right? Wokeism is a distraction, and it has to distract us from some things. It was very important that we talked about the economic and lived reality, because those are things that we should ultimately be thinking about. But in the video game sphere itself, we have huge issues that we should be talking about that we are not talking about. Do you remember back in like, well, I don't know, the huge like 25,000 years ago when we had loot boxes as part of the conversation back in like 2018, 2019. Remember how much pressure we were putting on companies about loot boxes? Where is that? Where did I go? Can we talk about that? Can we talk about the fact that just left us? Like, we no longer talk about loot boxes even though they're still around, if not worse. Is that crazy? We just completely forgot about loot boxes. We were literally... this is what I mean by it's a distraction. Think about it. When was the last time that you saw a YouTube video outraged about loot boxes? Not just like quietly lamenting the fact that they exist, but like genuinely outraged the way that we used to on like 2017 to 2019. It just felt like there was an era of anti-loot boxes because we were putting pressure. And think about it. Where did wokeism like really take rise? In 2020. Just as these companies were feeling the most pressure, they found something to distract us. We all had that little baby in the pram, just like fighting and trying to get out and get our freedom and go out to the park and get on that swing. And then eventually the mom and dad, they just found shiny keys, just shiny car keys, and they give it to us. And we just stay in that pram, just salivating all over it and moving them and trying to like remove them from the key ring, never understanding that we will never have enough strength to do it, even at adulthood, to just pull keys apart from a key ring. Never understanding how we could do it through other means. But no, we're just there salivating in the pram. They gave us wokeism, and now we no longer care about loot boxes. But I'm here to tell you that loot boxes are bad. And we should be talking about them. We should still be talking about them in 2024, 2025, 2035. We should be talking about them. Even if we have defeated them by 2035, we should still be talking about loot boxes. Loot boxes are awful. They're awful and they ruin video games. This is our art form. They ruin us. That's what we should be talking about. You shouldn't care whether like this character is bi or trans or this or that in a video game. You should care whether this game has loot boxes. And most games do. A lot of games, I mean, not most games, but I mean a lot of live service games do. Why are we talking about loot boxes anymore? They didn't go away. They didn't stop being a thing. We didn't solve them. Okay? So, hey, let's talk about how to make loot boxes good, right? And by loot boxes good, I mean, let's talk about how to abuse people through using psychological tactics that have been well researched and well documented to make sure that people pay you as much money as possible. So trick number one, you have to give people the gambler's fallacy, okay? If you toss a fair coin 3 times and happen to get 3 heads in a row, most humans will think that there's a higher than normal chance of getting tails on the next flip. This is known as the gambler's fallacy, because the coin is quote-unquote due to come up with tails. Even though each flip is a separate event that always has a 50-50 chance of being heads or tails. So you see, this is a gambler's fallacy. It's basically the idea that if you have a lot of bad runs in a row, then the universe kind of owes you a good one. You don't think to yourself that the universe is uncaring and that every single roll has as much chance of getting what you want versus the last 1,000 that you did. But no, you feel like there's this building sense of like, you know, karma, that you're going to get rewarded eventually. Okay? So over here, if you're a game designer, you can use this quirk to make your loot boxes more compelling. When gamers open a box that doesn't contain some legendary item that are coveting, keep track. Remind them of how many loot boxes they have opened that did not contain an item of that quality. After a few tries, the gambler's fallacy will kick in and they will think of the odds of getting a legendary item would have gone up. Here's the second trick, the sunk cost effects. This one can be summed up as throwing good money after bad, okay? People will use the money they've already wasted on gambling as a justification for spending more money on the same exact failed enterprise. This year is perfect. The sunk cost fallacy is great because people that spend $1,000 on a particular thing will think to themselves like, no, I need to make up for the $1,000, otherwise it was a waste if I don't end up getting this thing that I've been chasing. Again, this combines beautifully with the gambler's fallacy, right? Okay, so here's another way to be extra evil. The sunk cost effect happens most often when people feel like they can recoup their losses, like in a casino. If you really want to choose a knife, okay, offer players a chance to win back 20% of their recent expenditures when they unbox something of legendary quality or whatever. That way, the more money they spend, the more they'll get back. Here's the third trick, okay? The availability heuristic. Okay, another weird thing about mortals is that when they can more easily remember something, they think it occurs more frequently than it really does. Okay, so basically this one here is basically saying this. Imagine that you have a car crash or your friend has a car crash and you are aware of it. Because it's going to stay in your mind for a long time, you are now going to start overestimating internally how often car crashes happen. This is the same thing that happens when there's a big plane crash, right? Even though, aviation, like as in commercial aviation, is the safest mode of transport that we have statistically, because it makes such a huge impact whenever there is an issue, especially if there is a tragic crash where lots of people might die, then that stays in our minds, and then we believe that the risk of flying is much higher than it actually is, even though you should like, flying is way safer than walking down the street, like way safer, right? So you should fly everywhere, statistically speaking, if you could. But in reality, it stays in your mind, and that availability heuristic means that you mistakenly attribute this thing of happening more often than it actually does, just because it stays in your mind, especially like car crashes, also plane crashes and something like that. Okay, now it says here, as a game designer, you can use this availability heuristic to sell more loot boxes by constantly showing other players opening them and getting the good stuff from them. Okay, but you should never show people getting junk from a loot box, only good loot. So this is perfect, right? So what you do is you design a game in a social space where players can open loot boxes in front of other players, but you make sure that they can only see when those players are getting something really, really good. Now then, the player that is watching is going to think to themselves like, wait, I just saw like 3 players unlock this really epic item. This must happen all the time. This must be easy to get. And there is the trick. Now, trick number 4 is the illusion of control. It says people tend to think they have some control over random events, right? Casinos long ago discovered that if they let players make some kind of meaningless choice or tap a button to potentially nudge a slot machine reel into a winning position, they would love it and gamble even more, right? In reality, they're also winning as the same, right? So with loot boxes, here's what you do. Instead of clicking on a loot box to open it, let them choose between 3 boxes, all of which in reality have the same contents. So that's the trick there. Now you get to choose 1, 2, or 3. And you think to yourself that if you choose quote unquote the right one, you have a better likelihood of obtaining what you're looking for. When in reality, that is just an illusion. All of the loot boxes are the same, but we can trick you into believing they're not. The next one is a near miss illusion. Here's another one you can easily borrow from slot machine. If people feel like they almost won, they're likely to keep gambling. Okay, so for loot boxes, just pretty straightforward. Just add in some kind of animation to the process, okay, that shows a flurry of rewards that finally settles into what a player gets. Then make sure you show them almost getting something good before arriving at a common spray or dumb player icon or something. So that there is trick number 5, and that is how loot boxes are designed, right? Loot boxes ruin video games, okay? Now over here we can take a look at practical examples how loot boxes have ruined sports video games, okay? So over here it says, it is no longer possible for a casual gamer to load up NBA 2K, Madden or FIFA and enjoy playing a few online matchups without breaking the bank, okay? So over here, in NBA 2K22, my team, a player can create a lineup of multiple players, blah, blah, blah. You can basically create a team, okay? Then it says here, 2K is currently running the endgame promotion, which has the best cards since the game's release, okay? So there we go. Although a player has a 100% chance of pulling a 95 plus overall card, it seems that pulling a 99 overall card endgame is practically impossible. So it said gaming YouTuber Troyden had 3 streams in which he attempted to pull an endgame card. I spent nearly $10,000 just to pull one. $10,000 to pull one card. Now, I believe in the NBA there might be 5 or 6 players on the team at the same time, something like that. So for you to pull 6 cards, multiply. It might take you up to $60,000 to have 6 endgame cards. This is loot boxes, people. Why aren't we talking about this anymore? Oh, because wokeism is a thing. That's crazy. That's crazy. So obviously says here, this will mean that they're also putting an endgame card 0.004%. Oh man. Hey, listen, EA made $1.62 billion from Madden and FIFA Ultimate Team during the 2021 fiscal year. $1.62 billion, not from selling the game, but from selling their quote-unquote microtransactions to the game. You're not microtransactioning nothing. At $10,000 on a single video game, you're just luxury. They should call them luxury transactions. That's what they are. You're paying the price of like a really like, I guess it would be entry level, but it'd be like a Rolex or something, or like a really high end like Chanel bag. Go and spend that money on your girlfriend at least. Like, if you manage to get one after talking about everything else that we talked about. Like, that's crazy. That's crazy, right? This is what wokeism is preventing us from talking about. It's a joke, and we are the punchline. Okay, now let's talk about the new version, okay? Because loot boxes aren't cool anymore. There's a new kid in town, and that's gacha games, right? So gacha games over here, okay? Over here says, we're just going to talk quickly about it, right? It starts as an average game, okay, but evolves into revolving around gambling. Gacha is derived from the phrase gotcha, because most gacha games try to implement gambling to be addicting. Many games have adopted this formula, which seems to remain a growing phenomenon. So here's how you will create your gacha game. First, you need it to be a free-to-play game, which will increase the chances of people to try and spend money on your game. The second is that you need to release your game incomplete, and you need to keep updating with new content over time. Right? The next principle is that you're going to use anime style characters, right? So that you can make these stylized graphics. There's many reasons for that, but essentially photorealistic graphics are very expensive to do. So stylized graphics like the anime style, especially something that's already popular, right? Because anime styles are already popular, it's going to just make your life a lot easier. It's going to make it a lot easier for your animators, for your engineers, for your technicians to create new characters and everything like that. Then it says over here, now that you have anime style characters, now you can introduce the next principle, which is to have multiple units for the team. So instead of having a single character that a person needs to play as, have 4 or 5. Okay, so now they can try to build a dream team, because now you have all of these characters with different abilities that can complement each other. And that there is going to be the best thing that you can do. Okay, so another mechanic that you're going to have is the idea of banners. That means that you can exclusively do gacha pools for a certain character for a limited time. This was done to make players panic when the character they want is on the banner and to make them spend more money immediately. So these are gacha games. Gacha games are just another form of loot boxes. But the brilliant part there is that you can keep it indefinite. Like, you don't have to limit yourself to like 5 or 11 characters on the pitch. You can do it for like huge team sizes and huge teams, because a person could get like squads of different characters that well synchronized with one another, and you can just keep on going indefinitely, right? Now, gacha games like Genshin Impact, they ruin gaming, okay? They really, really do. And we're not going to go through that final article. This video is long enough, but I just wanted to let you know, guys, that this is what we're being distracted from. You saw it in real life, you saw it in video games, and you see it with loot boxes and gacha. I want to come up with 2 more examples that I'm not going to have sources for, because doing the research for this was already long enough. Okay, but the first one is, let's take a look at the ABK trial, right? Activision Blizzard King, when Microsoft was doing the acquisition for it. Do you remember that Bobby Kotick, at the head of the ABK, was actually a really problematic figure, and he, supervised over an empire that basically put a lot of like minorities and women in really compromised places and had really bad workplace culture. And that was one of the big reasons why they lost stock and they were able to be purchased by Microsoft in the first place. Do you know that none of that ever came out again? Like, no one ever talks about it ever again. Like, Bobby Kotick, I think he got like, a $44 million pay bonus, pay parachute after Microsoft acquisition. This is what happens when you don't do the research beforehand. So let's see. Yeah, he received a golden parachute of at least $50 million, but some people estimated it to be Like he will have a compensation to be estimated of more than $375 million after Xbox's acquisition. He got to like walk out with huge colossal amount of money, never have to answer up to like any lawsuit or anything like that about his conduct and the kind of workplace culture he was, part of, enabling in the thing, and we just all forget about it. We just all go on, and now Microsoft has ABK because at that time I guess we cared about whether Call of Duty would be exclusive or not, but soon after that we just cared about whether I guess the next Call of Duty is woke or not. Like it's crazy. It's crazy. These people get away with it. Another example that I want to talk about is mobile games, right? Now, we talked about loot boxes and gacha games, but we have to recognize that those examples come from the mobile gaming world. Mobile games are a cesspool of microtransactions and luxury transactions, as we call them now, money transactions that are not micro anymore. But mobile video games are still video games. And instead of us talking about our disdain for all of these predatory games that are available to mobile phones through, what is the equivalent of like 2 to 3 billion gamers that play through the mobile phone primarily, we are talking about whether, Captain America should be played by a black actor, or whether, I don't know, there's a black Disney mermaid. Like, do you care that mermaids are not real, right? Like, that, right? Like, or like a black elf in Lord of the Rings. You do know that elves, at least the Lord of the Rings elves, I don't know about real elves, but those are made up, right? Those are fictional depictions. Do you care, bro? Do you care if it's woke? Okay, it's all woke. Can we now focus? If I say that, can we now focus on the things that matter? Because it's crazy. It is crazy that we have been distracted so long. It is crazy that the wool has been pulled over our eyes for so long, that all of these real issues are literally being wasted by the wayside, and we are just watching the utter collapse of society and our social norms and cultural values in real time, while we are arguing with strangers online about whether a piece of art that someone else made should be deemed as this or not, quote unquote, pushing the agenda. And what was the agenda anyway? To all of the grifters on YouTube, what is the agenda? Is the agenda to make you believe in black elves? That's it? All of these, like, neo, I don't even know, all of these, like, neoliberal, political, powerful, Illuminati force that is somehow driving this agenda in the West should make you believe that black mermaids exist? That's what they're doing it for, not world domination, just... How would that make sense? Or to remind you that black people exist in general, I guess? Like, do you really think that... Listen. Vote. Okay? Vote. Vote for the party that makes your life better in demonstrable ways. Not for the party that promises to, like, lock up immigrants or close borders or, do all of these things which are theater. They are theater. Not for the party that says, we will have more checks at the TSA or whatever. Not for the party that tells you that they will forgive student loans but never do it. Vote for the people who are actually proposing policies that will genuinely make your environment better. Vote at the mayor level, whatever. Vote at the city level for the person that is actually going to create better public sparks and better public infrastructure, for the person that's going to fix the roads, for the person that's going to add bike lanes, for the person that is going to encourage a walkable, livable city. Vote for the person that says that, they are going to go after the unfair, tax havens and practices, because what you see now is, if you think about it, when I talk about mobile games, right? When I talk about games like Genshin Impact, you have a lot of you and a lot of your peers around you, let's say the Australian or American or UKans, whatever, English or whatever, British, French, whatever, Francis, let's just say they're all from those places, and you have like 100 million of you, and you are all giving money, $10,000 or whatever, to Genshin Impact. You're taking your money here and you're sending it over to China to make people like Jama richer. Or you are taking all your money and you're sending it to EA to make some island in some no-name island in the middle of some like Pacific or Indian or whatever ocean, an island that 32 of you couldn't stand on without risk of sinking it, but it's a tax haven, so that's where the headquarters of the companies are, so that they can avoid paying their fair share of taxes. Vote for the person that's going to go after that. Don't vote by party, vote by person and vote by policy. Who cares? Who cares if you're leftist or rightist or whatever, centrist or neoliberalist or whatever label they want to put on you? Who the fuck cares, bro? What you should care about is, are you and yours able to actually develop in this economy? Is your labor, is your hard work actually being able to get rewarded in this economy? In this life, are you able to meet other people around you that have good financial standing with their banks, with their friends, with their people, so that you can collectively make things happen in your community? Because that's what it takes. It takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to help a startup business profit and become something more, right? It takes a village to be able to give housing affordability to the next generation. It takes all of us to all be doing well so that we can all target different aspects of the economy and have it all grow. If you have wealth pooling only at the top, eventually then we have societal collapse. We are already going through it, and it affects everything. It affects our birth rates, it affects our marriage rates, it affects our social anxieties, it affects our individual happiness, it affects our collective productivity, it affects every single part of our lives. But instead of that, we're all being distracted because Naughty Dog created a woke character. Wokeism is a joke, and we are the punchline.